Welcome to section 4.2, part 1, graphing. The first four questions are similar to part A, numbers 7 through 10, part B, 7 through 10, and part C, 7 through 10, in which you're given a table of x and y values and asked to find the coordinating value for the equation. I've already pre-canned a lot of my information just to speed up the video tutorial. If you find that it was a little too fast, go ahead and pause or rewind a little bit, or if it's a little too slow, feel free to fast forward. All right, the first one is 5x plus 3y equals 15. In the table, we're asked to find y when x equals negative 3, 0, and 1, and asked to find x when y is 0 and 2. So what I've done to speed us up on a Word document, if you're doing yours by hand, it won't speed you up as quickly. I copied and pasted this down below for my scratch work. And the trick here is to always insert the x or the y into, we're substituting it in where the variable is. However, I always put parentheses around this. The reason being, it tells me where that negative sign belongs to. So in this case, if I replace x with negative 3, so I would copy this and paste it into here, so I've copied it down to show my work. I know this isn't 5 minus 3, but really 5 times a negative 3, and I know the negative is connected with the 3. So it's really important to keep things straight, and I always put in those parentheses. Okay, so it's just a matter of working things out. 5 times negative 3 is 15, and that's 15 plus 3y equals 15. 15 plus 3y equals 15. And if we're solving for y, that means I need to, this is a negative 15, sorry, that's a negative 15, so I need to add it to this side. So I'm going to cut this just to speed things up. I'm going to bring it over here and also use a little less work because I have this divided into columns and I think it'll get kind of confusing. Okay, so now I have 3y equals 15 plus 15 is 30. So 3y equals 30. Solve it by dividing both sides by 3 makes this 10. So I'm going to come up here and put 10 in my answer, and I've already listed my answers just to double check. There's my 10. If you want to make sure that you write that down on your work or notes, I'm going to go ahead and delete this, so maybe pause and write that down quickly just so that everything lines up nicely. All right, my next one is substituting in a 0 for x. And remember, x comes first. It's alphabetical, x and then y. So I'm going to put the 0 in, and I still, even though there isn't a negative sign here, just to stay in the habit, I put the parentheses on for every time I substitute in. And then, sorry, let's see, 5 times 0 is 0, so I have 0 plus 3y, which is just 3y, equals 15. Divide both sides by 3, makes this y equals 5. So I'll fill that in up here, and I'm actually going to go ahead and highlight these because I want to state that those are the answers. All right, my next one. I want a 1 substituted in for the x, so I'll put the 1 in my x, and I'm going to do that down here in my scratch work. 5 times 1 is 1, or 5, then plus 3y equals 15. To isolate the y, I need to subtract the 5 from both sides. So I'm left with 3y here, and then I have 15 minus 5 here, which is 10. And then I need to divide both sides by 3 to isolate y, which gives me y equals 10 thirds. And I'm going to put that in here. I could change that to a mixed number instead of an improper fraction, but I'm going to go ahead and stick with the improper fraction for, I think most of your answers on your homework are also in improper fractions. Okay, now a little different. We're going to be substituting numbers in for the y value over here. So the first one here is 0. And again, even though I don't have a negative sign, I'm still going to put the parentheses. It's a really, really good habit to get into. So put the parentheses on. 3 times 0 is 0, which gives me 5x equals 15. Divide both sides by 5. Gives me x equals 3. And again, I'm going to highlight that to show that it's my answer. And I'm going to delete this just to keep everything organized. Okay, the next one says to substitute 2 in for y, again with parentheses. 3 times 2 is 6. So I have 5x plus 6 equals 15. To isolate the x, I need to subtract the 6 from both sides. That leaves me with 5x on the left and 15, minus 6 on the right, which is 9. Now divide both sides by 5. That then isolates the x, and this becomes 9/5. And again, I could change that to a mixed number instead of an improper fraction. I'm going to go ahead and leave it if I wanted to. As a quick refresher, 5 goes into 9 one time with 4 left over, so it'd be 1 4/5. And I'm going to delete this so we can move on to the next problem. Okay, here's our next table. 2x minus 8y equals 16. We'll be substituting in -2 for x, -1 for x, 0 for y, 1 and 2 for y. Again, I've already copied and pasted my equation down here and went ahead and substituted the -2 in for the x for my first one. Don't forget parentheses. These negatives are really important so it doesn't get confusing. Okay, so we have 2 times -2 minus 8y equals 16. 2 times -2 is -4 minus 8y equals 16. Now I need to get my 4 on the other side because it's a subtract 4 here or a -4. Remember, you have to look at the front. To get rid of this, I need to add 4. So I'm going to add 4 to this side, and it will cancel out on this side. So 8y, -8y, I'm not going to copy and paste that, it'll be just as fast to type, equals 20. And then divide both sides by this -8, which leaves me with y equals, a positive divided by a negative is -28. But I need to simplify this. And a number that'll go both into 20 and 8 is 4. -20 divided by 4 is -5. And 8 divided by 4 is 2. And again, I'm going to go ahead and keep these as improper fractions. If you wanted to change that one, need that to be a little bigger, you would do 2 into 5 goes 2 times with 1 left over, so it'd be 2 1/2. But I'm going to keep it like this. I'm going to set up the highlights so I'm just good to go. All right, I'm going to delete these so that everything, nope, that was okay. I seem to have deleted too much. Oh, there it is. Okay. All right, let's move to the next one. We will be substituting in -1 for x, and I put the parentheses on. -2 times, or 2 times -1 is -2, minus 8y equals 16. And to isolate the variable, we're going to get rid of the -2. Because it's negative here, to get rid of that, I add 2, which cancels it out on the left side. And oops, that gives me -8y equals 18. Divide both sides by -8, isolates the y, and a positive divided by a negative is negative 18/8. And again, we're going to have to simplify this one. So a number that'll go into both 18 and 8 is 2. That's the highest I see. So 18, yeah, 2. So -18 divided by 2 is -9. 8 divided by 2 is 4. All right, so -9/4. Let's copy and paste that up here. And I'm going to highlight that as my answer. Okay, moving on to the next one. These are my favorites. I love when 0 is given as one of the substitutions. So this one I'm going to put 0 in for the y value here. So substitute or replace the y with 0. And the reason I like it so much is when you substitute it in, 0 times whatever it's being multiplied is gone. I'm going to do that on the next step though. And that's my favorite. So we get 2x equals 16. And to solve for x, we divide both sides by 2, which leaves me with x equals 8. And we'll put 8 here. And I'm going to delete this, get us back on track. Okay, now we have 1 being substituted in for y. 8 times 1 is 8. So I have 2x minus 8 equals 16. And then to isolate the x, we need to add 8. So we're left with 2x on the left side. 16 plus 8, that gives me 24. Divide both sides by 2, and we're left with x equals 12. And we'll put that up here. I'm going to delete this once again and move to the next one, in which we substitute 2 in for y. Okay, so I've substituted my 2 in for y. 8 times 2 is 16, so I have 2x minus 16 equals 16. To isolate the x, I need to add 16 because that's a negative 16. So I'm going to delete this and add 16 to this side. That leaves me 2x equals 32. Divide both sides by 2, and x equals 16. All right. At this point, if you're feeling confident and comfortable with seeing these first two examples, feel free to fast forward through 3 and 4 to move to the next portion, in which we graph and find 3 points on a line. Like this. Okay, so we're going to move to number 3 if you've decided to stick with me on this one. And we'll go through these next 2 examples. All right, on 3, I'm just going to set up my highlights really quick. Oops. I just want to highlight here. Okay, so we'll substitute -1 in for x, again with the parentheses. -1 times 4 makes -4, minus 5y equals -10. And this negative out in front To move it over or to cancel it out, I need to add 4. So it cancels out on that side, and I get an add 4 on this side. Now I have negative 5y equals negative 6 plus 4 makes negative, or negative 10 plus 4 makes negative 6. And then divide both sides by the negative 5. A negative divided by a negative makes a positive, so I get positive 6/5. There we go. And moving to the next one. My favorite, when we substitute 0, something I do by hand sometimes is if I have a 0 times, I use my finger and I cover it up because it's just gone. In this case, we can just delete it like that and divide both sides by a negative 5. So I get y equals negative 10 divided by negative 5 is positive 2. And I'm going to get rid of this and put in a 2. There we go. Okay, now the next one, I need to put substitute a 1 in for y. So 5 times 1 is still 5, so I have 4x minus 5 equals negative 10. I need to isolate the x, so I need to get rid of the minus 5. To get rid of that, the opposite is add 5. So I'll add 5 to both sides. This gives me 4x equals positive 5, or negative 5. And divide both sides by 4. Isolates the x, and then divide the negative 5 divided by 4 is negative 5/4. And, oh, we need to make that just a little bigger. And get rid of this. There we go. Okay, so the next one, substituting negative 2 in for y, again with my parentheses so it doesn't look like 5 minus 2. 5 times negative 2 is negative 10, and this is negative here. So I could say subtracting negative 10, or I can think of it as negative 5 times negative 2. Either way, that ends up being 4x plus 10 equals negative 10. Now to get rid of this negative, or this positive 10, I need to subtract 10 from both sides, which makes 4x equals negative 20. Divide both sides by positive 4 makes negative 5. And the last one for number 3, to finish filling in our table, we substitute in 4 for y. Negative 5 times 4 leaves me with 4x minus 20 equals negative 10. To isolate the 4x, I need to add 20 to both sides to cancel that out. So I'm going to add 20. So I have 4x equals positive 10. Divide both sides by 4. That isolates the x on the left, and I'm left with x equals 10/4, which of course it's an improper fraction, but I do need to simplify it. Divide both top and bottom by 2, which gives me 5/2. And I can also change this to a mixed number if I would like. In this case, I'm going to keep it like the other ones. To change it, you would divide 2 into 5, which goes 2 times with 1 left over, so 2.5, or just 5/2. All right, let's move to the next one. Example 4. Here's another of the tricky ones, is I have a negative in front of the x, and so when I substitute a negative in, it's really important to have those parentheses, because I only substitute whatever the number is that I'm given, in this case negative 7, that whole thing goes in for just the x because the variable it's replacing is the x, and so I need that negative 7 put in there which makes it negative times negative 7, which makes that positive 7. Another way of thinking about it is putting the coefficient 1 here so that you can remember that it's like negative 1 times x. So that would be like negative 1 times negative 7, which makes it positive 7. Okay, so we have positive 7 plus 7y equals 21. To isolate my, I just have to come down here. To isolate my y, I need to subtract a 7 from both sides. So I'm going to delete this. It cancels out when I subtract 7. 21 minus 7 makes, we're back up here, so 7y equals 21 minus 7 is 14. Divide both sides by 7. Isolates the y, and 14 divided by 7 is 2. So we'll put a 2 up here and delete some of this to hopefully help out. Are we there? Good. Okay, now the next one, my favorite is 0. You can just ignore this. And now I have 7y equals 21. Divide both sides by 7 gives me y equals 3. Okay, and the next one, we're substituting 1 in for y in this one. 7 times 1 is 7. So I have negative x plus 7 equals 21. Subtract 7 from both sides to isolate the x. So that's gone. Subtract 7, which gives me negative x equals positive 14. But I'm not done. I have to have this be a positive x. So again, remember I can put the coefficient of 1 up there, which means I need to divide both of these by a negative 1. Some people just say divide by a negative, and that works too. When I divide a negative x divided by a negative, it makes it positive. And on the right side, a positive 14 divided by a negative makes it negative 14. Okay, and again, we're going to have to make that a little bigger and get rid of my scratch work. And another 0, so I can just ignore 7 times 0. And I have negative x equals positive 21. Again, divide both sides by a negative, which gives me positive x equals negative 21. My favorites. And for the last one, another negative sign. Make sure you put the parentheses. And the parentheses go right around where your x would be. So if you want to just change that to have an open and closed set of parentheses, feel free so that you remember where you substitute. A negative times a negative 1, delete that, makes a positive 1. And then I have plus 7y equals 21. And I need to get rid of my 1, and that's a positive 1, so I need to subtract 1 from both sides. That leaves me with 7y equals 20. Now to continue isolating y, divide both sides by 7, which gives me y equals 20/7. And I'll keep that as an improper fraction as well. There we go. So that's how we fill in the tables, similar to numbers 7 through 10 on each of these sections. Now moving on to the next part, Graph the following lines and label 3 points. So the first thing we need to do is similar to what we did in the previous part, except in this case I get to choose. And the ones I always choose are the x and y intercepts, where I have 0 on the x and 0 on the y. Like we saw before, it makes it so much faster if you can just cancel out one of those. And then I like small numbers, so I'll just put a 1. And I'll probably stay consistent with each of these so it goes quickly. We'll highlight this, and for my scratch work, we'll substitute 0 here. Don't forget your parentheses. -2 times 0 is 0. So I just have y equals -4. So this all canceled out, and I can put -4. So that was fast. And then going back for the next one, plug 0 in for y. So 2x, -2x plus nothing equals -4. -2x equals -4. Divide both sides by -2. Oops. And I have x equals -4 divided by -2 is +2. And we have our next point. And let's delete those. Get us back, get us back on track. Something happened here. Nope. Okay, and the last one we're going to plug in a 1 for x. Don't forget parentheses. -2 times +1 is -2. So I'm just going to delete that to show my work. And to isolate the y, I need to add 2 to both sides, the opposite of whatever is up here. Add 2. So that got rid of this. Y equals -4 plus 2, and that's -2. Then I have some points over here. What I've done is I inserted a shape and I did a circle. I made it as small as I possibly could, and then I formatted by filling it in with black so that I could show you where these points are on my graph. So and then I copied and pasted them for each of these problems, and that'll be fast. What I did to get this is I just searched for graph paper online and then copied and pasted the image into my my Word document. So now I need to find the place 0, -4. 0 meaning that I go 0 in the x direction. X goes left and right, so I don't go anywhere left and right. So I stay here in the middle at 0. Then it says go down 4 on the y. And remember, I gave you a little tip about that. Y is the tall letter. So if you kind of think of it as being the tall axis. So we go down 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. Now if you're finding that yours tries to snap into the grid, you can go to Page Layout and go to, oops, there we are, Align, and go to Grid Settings. If you have this Snap Objects to Grid, then it'll kind of go to wherever the nearest corner is in the grid. If you unclick that, then you can place it wherever you want. Okay, the next one is at 2, 0. 2 meaning I go 2 on the x-axis, and 0. And let's get that right in there, right there. Okay, and oh, it looks like I have too many. My last one is 1, -2. So I'll get my third dot. Okay, starting here at the origin, I move to the right one for the x and down 2 for the y, and right there. And hopefully they'll all three make a line. If you find that one of these points is over somewhere weird, not forming a line for you, go back and check your math because all of these will be forming a line. Now to show that this is a line, I'm going to use my double arrows because the line doesn't stop right here. The line goes on forever, and I need to show that with my double arrows saying it goes beyond. These are just the 3 points that I found. And I hope we get this right on here. Oops. There we go. There's our line going through our 3 points, graphed and ready to go. Let's try our next one. Number 6 will come down here. Y equals positive 2/3 x. So I need to pick my 3 points. Again, I'm going to pick my favorites, the x and y intercepts, which are 0, and then something easy, I'll put in a 1 for x. So I put in a 0 for x here, and I'm just going to show that right here. 0 here becomes 0 times 2/3, which is 0, which makes y equal 0. And here, put in a 0 for y, and I have 0 equals 2/3 x. To solve for x, I divide both sides by 2/3, and 0 divided by anything is 0. And that gets confusing because now I have 2 points right here on the origin at 0, 0, and 0, 0, and that means I can't make a line. But that does say that the x and y intercept is 0, and it should match. I shouldn't have gotten 0, 0, and then 0, 1. That doesn't make sense. Okay, so I have to have a third point to make a line. So make sure that you're doing a lot of double checking on this last one to make sure you get it in the right place because you don't have the other 2 dots to make sure that you're making it, that you're doing the correct mathematics. Okay, so I'm going to put in a 1 for x. So I have y equals, in this case, 1. 1 times 2/3 is 2/3. And we will grab our last dot. 1 in the x direction and up 2/3. That looks about 2/3 right there. All right, so then we can just graph our line by insert a shape, my double arrow, and make sure I go through both points, and there we go. Okay, so let's move on to example 7, where x equals -3. Some of you might be a little confused at this if you haven't read through your text, which I hope you have at this point. X equals -3. This means that no matter what I put in for a y value, x will always be -3. So I could put a 0 here, 500 here. However, my graph doesn't go out to 500, so I'll leave it 5. Or I can do -9. Either way, no matter what number I put in, x will always be -3 because there's no place to put the y. So I'm just going to put -3. Oops. And again, -3. So I pick a couple of y's, I find these -3's. If you're not comfortable, or if you're more comfortable just going to the next step, some of you who have read the text can go ahead and start graphing this one because you know what x equals -3 would look like. However, I'm going to graph my 3 points, -3, 0. That means x is -3, so I move over 3 on the x-axis, 0. Then I find -3, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, here, oops, right there. And then -3, -9. There we go. And so this line, and remember you're looking for all 3 of them to create a line. And there we go. So this one is a vertical line where x equals -3. Let's go to the next one. 6x plus 2y equals 24. I'm going to set up my table with my x and y intercept, and then I'm just going to do a 1 because it's fast. So if I put a 0 in for x, I'm now going to do this mentally by just kind of blocking out that 6x because 0 times 6 is 0, and I'm just left with 2y equals 24. Divide both sides by 2 gives you y equals 12. And now the next one, put a 0 in for y. So you can use your finger or just kind of blank it out in your head. Whenever you put a 0 in for y, it kind of cancels that out, and I'm left with 6x equals 24. Divide both sides by 6, and that gives me x equals 4. And then the last step, I'm going to plug 1 in for x and put in my parentheses 1. 1 times 6 is 6. And then to isolate, we take this 6, subtract it from both sides. So this is 6. Subtract 6. On your own, I would continue to show each step. I'm just doing it all on one line just for the sake of formatting. Okay, 24 minus 6, 2y equals 18. Divide both sides by 2, and y equals 9. And let's delete these guys. Okay, so now we have our points, 0, 12. That means I'm 0 in the xy direction, 12 in the y, so it should be up here. That looks to be about 12. 4, 0. That means I go 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Oops. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep. 4, 0, and 1, 9. 1, just a little. All right, and it's as close as I'm going to do. Let's go ahead and insert our line showing that it goes beyond the points, and all 3 of them line up. So that means that we did our math. Hopefully we did it correctly. The chances are that you did 3 incorrect are less so than just doing 1. So it's a good thing they all lined up. Let's go to the next one. Y equals 6. This is very similar to number 7, except in this case, it's y being 6. So no matter what I pick for the x, whether it be 10, negative 10, or even 0, the answer will always be 6. Oops. And there we go. So I'm going to take my points, 10 and 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Negative 10 and 6. I thought that went to 10, not to 7. And 0, 6. There we go. And then we insert, oops, our line straight across. All right, and our last one, 5x plus y equals 6. So again, I'm going to pick my x and y intercepts, 0, and plug 0 in for x, which means this cancels out, and I'm just left with y equals 6. And then if I plug 0 in for y, I get 5x equals 6, and I'm just highlighting that to show that it's 0. Divide both sides by 5, and I get 6/5. And then I'm going to pick a 1. 1 for this gives me 5 times 1 is 5. plus y equals 6. And to isolate the y, we subtract 5. And we get y equals 1. So we have the point 1, 1. And delete those. All right, let's come over here. 0 in the x direction and up 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then 6/5 is 1 1/5, 0. So I'm going to go over 1 1/5, so not quite on the 1, and 0. And then my last one is 1 and 1. Oops. There we go, and the 3 make a line. So we insert our double arrowed line and go through all 3 points. And there we have our line. All right, that is it for number 2. Oh, wait. I did need to go back and change this one. I thought that went up to 10, so I'll fix that really quickly. And -9, that doesn't change. It just comes down here. It's all still on the same line. I apologize. I made that mistake. I thought this was 10. So this line is 7, 8, 9. Oops. So I need to fix this. So we're going to have to estimate. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So this point needs to move up to this spot. And this one needs to move up 3 more. 10, 11, 12. There we go. Now we can fix this by changing the direction. There we go. Now that one's fixed. And now it's it for part 1 of section 4.2 on graphing. If you have questions, contact me and good luck on your homework.